Good evening, welcome along to the Transfer Show. Just over 2 weeks of the window left and the clock is ticking. Dharma Sheth, Kaveh Solakot and Melissa Reddy are primed as we go through the day's top stories, and there's plenty on the way. Cristiano Ronaldo continues to take centre stage, but are we any closer to a resolution? Manchester United's disastrous start to the season has heaped the pressure on their recruitment process. We clear up where they stand on Frankie de Jong and Casamira this hour. Plus, could Christian Pulisic swap London for Manchester? There's also news on Anthony Gordon, James Maddison and Dele Alli, and a Newcastle closing in on João Pedro. Yeah, we are going to talk about Manchester United on the field very shortly. But first, Kaveh, news surrounding the ownership. We know that the current owners are not the most popular with the supporter base particularly, but could that change in terms of who has stakes in the club moving forward?
Yes, well, Bloomberg are reporting this afternoon that the Glazer family are considering selling a minority stake in Manchester United. They say that preliminary discussions have been held about bringing in a new investor. The Glazer family don't want to sell Manchester United, according to Bloomberg, but just bring in more investment into the club. Now, the New York Stock Exchange has reacted to that news, with United's shares going up by 4% this morning. And according to Bloomberg, any potential deal could see Manchester United valued at up to £5 billion. As far as United themselves are concerned, they are not commenting on these reports at all. If we're talking about bringing in investment to a club like Manchester United, there are a lot of people out there who want to invest in Premier League clubs at the moment. We saw when Chelsea was put out for sale, the New York Investment Bank, who were marketing the sale, they were contacted by more than 100 interested parties. So there is a lot of interest, especially from the US, in investing in Premier League clubs. And according to Bloomberg, the Glazer family considering selling a minority stake in United.
There will be a lot of moving parts in this question, Melissa, but a minority share in a club like Man United, would that change a lot about the day-to-day running of the club and the amount of finance within it?
Not particularly at the onset, but I think what it suggests, if you're saying that you're open to a minority stake, is you're looking at the suitors out there and the kind of people that do want to get involved and their financial might, and does a minority stake then turn into a greater stake? Overall control of the club. I think that's where the direction is heading from people who are financially aware of these kind of dealings. They say that it's a way to not lessen your power, your negotiating power. If you're just saying we're putting the club for sale, you're saying we're panicking about the situation around us, the fan reaction to us, the misery around the place, the performances on the pitch, and that lowers your negotiating position. But if you're saying we're interested in selling a minority stake, look at the share price jumping up, you still are operating from a position of power and strength.
Of course, as far as the Glazer family are concerned, they've sold effectively a minority stake in United before, because they floated the club on the New York Stock Exchange. They sold 10% of their shares. So it's something that's happened in the past. But in the past, they sold that stake to shareholders, so you could buy shares in the club on the New York Stock Exchange. This time, it's about bringing in an investor. And we saw with the Chelsea situation, there's a lot of people who want to invest in Premier League clubs. Why do they want to do that? Because they think they can get a good deal at the moment, and they think the value of Premier League clubs is going to boom in the next few years, because they believe there's going to be a lot more interest in streaming, and also they believe they can monetize, effectively make money out of all the fans that these big Premier League clubs have all around the world. So it's not surprising that people want to invest in Manchester United. It is surprising, if you believe what Bloomberg are saying, and I've got no reason to doubt them, that the Glazer family are considering selling a minority stake.
As Melissa mentioned, there are pressing concerns on the pitch, not least Cristiano Ronaldo at the moment, who's going sort of a bit Donald Trump with his recent social media comments and talking about fake news.
Yes, Cristiano Ronaldo, it's well documented, had a bit of a pop at the media on social media earlier today, saying there was a lot of lies being printed about him. I think he was reacting to something that he'd seen on social media. The point I would make is that we've seen this happen with players before, and we'll see it happen again and again. Players who want to leave a club, especially when they don't get their own way, often use the media. And if you look at the timeline of what's happened with Cristiano Ronaldo, the story first emerged at the beginning of July. Duncan Castles in the Sunday Times, a journalist who's got excellent contacts with George Mendes, Ronaldo's agent. He came out with a story that Ronaldo wanted to leave because he wanted to play in the Champions League. His family weren't happy in the Northwest. It was a great story. It made back and front pages all around the world. Nobody from Ronaldo's camp released a statement saying that story was not true. Ronaldo didn't go on the pre-season tour. OK, yes, he had personal reasons for not going. He came back in the friendly that he played in. He left that game early. Erik ten Hag said that was unacceptable. You saw his body language during the defeat at Brentford and how he behaved at the end of that game. So all these things are not lies. There may be specific things that he's not happy with. For instance, people are saying nobody wants Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm sure that upsets him. It hurts his pride and his ego. Maybe he's got annoyed about that. Maybe he's got annoyed about the fact that The Athletic have said sometimes he eats on his own in the canteen at Carrington. I don't think The Athletic said he always does that, but sometimes
everyone eats in their own.
Everyone's done that. So maybe there's specific things that he's unhappy with that have been taken out of context, maybe on social media. But the broad thrust of what's been reported, and it was started by Duncan Castles, as I said, is totally accurate.
Darmish, this is a constant cloud, Cristiano Ronaldo, but it almost seems equally pressing for Erik ten Hag is the incomings, and we know central midfield is a massive area. Frankie de Jong has always been the number one target. Any change in where United are with that?
Frankie de Jong, we've been speaking about him since minute one, haven't we, in this window? Confidence, I'm told, is receding, but the door is not closed on signing Frankie de Jong from Barcelona. Look, Barcelona will know now that Manchester United are looking at alternatives, because it is public knowledge now that United are keeping other players warm, as it were, in case the Frankie de Jong deal doesn't work. That in itself could be seen as a form of brinkmanship from Manchester United, because they're saying to Barcelona, well, OK, you don't want to sell, do business over Frankie de Jong, we're going to move on to other targets. United, remember, have always been comfortable in their position. They said they've got a broad agreement in principle with Barcelona worth £72 million. So in one way, you could argue that the ball is in Barcelona's court. United want the player, but United also know that Barcelona want to sell Frankie de Jong as well. So completely ruling the signing out hasn't been done yet by Manchester United. They still believe somewhere that potentially a deal can be done. So while that hope remains, I don't think they're going to withdraw any kind of interest. And I think they will feel that Barcelona may get desperate the later in this transfer window that we go.
Man United are getting increasingly desperate, aren't they? Particularly if they keep losing.
But we kept saying Frankie de Jong, number one target, and they're keeping alternatives warm. I'm sensing now maybe a little switch in that they're keeping the de Jong one bubbling in the background while they pursue these alternatives. Maybe sending a message to Barcelona to say, OK, no problem, and then see what Barcelona's next move is going to be.
And the alternatives would be?
I mean, there's been so many.
Take your pick.
There's been so many. There's like a new name nearly every single day. Real Madrid's Casamira is one that has been emerging over the past 24 hours. No formal offer as yet, but one source has told us that Manchester United have had initial talks with Real Madrid about Casemiro. Whether Carlo Ancelotti would want him to leave is another question, even though they've got two new midfielders in at Real Madrid. And whether Casemiro would want to leave the Champions League winners and join a club that's in the Europa League is another matter. Brighton's Moise Caicedo is another one that is emerging as well. We understand that Manchester United do have an interest. They've been long-term admirers. They tried
so
to
even before he was good against them 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, they actually did try to sign him when Brighton signed him in February 2021. He's only played 10 times in the Premier League. One of those times, though, was against Manchester United on the opening day when he did impress. One source has told us, though, that Manchester United are expected to make an offer for Moise Caicedo. That's despite Brighton's stance of we've got no intention of selling him.
I'm fascinated by Casamiro, Melissa, and the way that the club is ordering things. Okay, so I'm sure sit here and argue the toss with me about Adrian Rabiot versus Casamira, but the guy's a Champions League winner. He would surely cost more. It would be a more complicated deal than Rabiot. So why go Rabiot first and then suddenly say, oh, actually, we quite fancy Casemiro?
Well, why do you know that one of your most pressing needs has, and for a long time, has been a defensive midfielder, and then you get to 15 days left to go in the window and you're like, oh, Casemiro, let's have a crack at that. None of United's window makes sense, to be quite fair. And yes, it's going to be a lot more expensive than the Rabiot deal. He would cost probably upwards of £50 million if Real Madrid even get to the point of sanctioning a sale. Carlo Ancelotti likes balance in that midfield between experience and the kind of young disruptors that he has, like Camavinga. Now, Casemiro, in terms of profile, ticks everything United desperately need. He would offer greater aerial prowess, which they're currently struggling with, exceptional tackling, surety in transition, just everything about him. He is pedigree, and they could do with some pedigree. I'm interested in what Cristiano Ronaldo and Rafael Varane are telling him about the state of play at United.
Well, at least Ronaldo would have someone to eat with in the canteen.
Yeah, well, there's that. But personal terms there, he'd cost more than Rabiot. Whatever Rabiot was demanding, in terms of salary, Casemiro automatically commands more. He is a higher grade of player. He has more accolades. He is just, by some distance, better. Age, again, United are not thinking here, what are we doing for the next 5 years? Like, what's our long-term vision and plan? And that's because there hasn't really been a strategy in place other than, let's give Ten Hag what he wants. When he hasn't got everything that he's wanted, they're like, panic stations and moving from one target to the other. I'd be surprised if they get Casemiro over the line, because they couldn't get easier deals. Juventus were desperate to get rid of Rabiot. Rabiot wanted to go to United. It was just personal terms, and they couldn't get that done. Casemiro is a harder deal.
And just to come back to the point that you made, it's surely quite a hard sell from European champions to, and it's 2 games in, but bottom of the league having just been whacked 4-0 by Brentford.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And Manchester United fans probably would be excited if someone like Casemiro would come to the club. But like they've had with previous signings, I mentioned Paul Pogba in that bracket as well, when immediately are United fans going to think, oh, well, all the problems are solved then? I think it's more than just Casemiro coming in and solving all of Manchester United's problems. They need to get a squad around Casemiro. If you look at Casemiro for Real Madrid, he's been brilliant for them. But look what's around him. He's got a Champions League winning team around him, a La Liga winning team around him. He's coming to he's not coming, but potentially going to a Manchester United team that doesn't have that kind of stability around in the squad. They're still looking around to not only bring in someone like Casemiro, but bring in players who would play alongside Casemiro. So it's not like Casemiro's coming in, oh, there's a final piece of the jigsaw. It's one piece of a very complex one, and it's being illustrated in how United are going about their business, because even though De Jong has been the #1 target the whole time, these other alternatives that they're keeping warm, there seems to be a different name every single day with regard to that. I just think, look, with regard to the De Jong one, I go back to it, it doesn't look likely at the moment, but just something about it that United keep hanging in there. Are they getting some encouragement from Barcelona? Are they getting encouragement from Frankie de Jong that, yes, in the remaining days that remain in this window, a deal can still be done for him?
Jarmusch mentioned it there. There are names almost every hour. You told me earlier before we came on air, I think it was 18, you told me in the last 3 days, of different names linked with Manchester United.
Is that it?
Just the 18. Christian Pulisic is one. Chelsea have options in that area. Do you think that they would be willing to let him go?
I think Chelsea would be open to letting Christian Pulisic go. I'm not sure whether they would want him to go to Manchester United. If United were trying to get him on loan, I don't think Chelsea would really want to do that, to send a player out on loan to one of their rivals. I know people are having fun on social media. A couple of people have been saying, well, United are no longer Chelsea's rivals, but let's be serious. They are historically, although maybe not at this moment in time. So the short answer to your question is Chelsea would be open to selling him, ideally not to Manchester United, and I don't think they'd want him to go on loan to Manchester United. Although if it was a loan with an obligation to buy, then that would be a possibility.
It's fascinating because I think you sort of begin to see the scale of the issues when we're talking about the players, and we're looking literally at almost every position on the pitch, and we now move to goalkeepers as well. Yeah,
I'll come very quickly to goalkeepers in a moment. Just picking up on what Cav was saying about the forward players, that there's also been an initial approach, which we have been reporting before, for PSV Eindhoven's Cody Gakpo, who played against Rangers in the Champions League yesterday. But that one looks like it will have to wait until the final week, because PSV I've still got that vital second leg against Rangers next Wednesday. With regard to goalkeepers, yes, we know that Manchester United are in the market to bring in a goalkeeper to provide competition for David De Gea and for Tom Heaton, following the departure of Dean Henderson on loan to Nottingham Forest. There is an interest in the Borussia Mönchengladbach goalkeeper Jan Sommer, the Switzerland #1. Now, there is a feeling that even though there is that interest, Sommer would want to be a #1, whereas I think what United are trying to do just now is have a pool of 3 that would all be capable of playing in the first team, not necessarily having one who comes in and says, I want to be the #1 or I'm not going to join. So I just think with that in mind, that might not be as likely as maybe Manchester United would want. But you remember, Jan Sommer, first-choice goalkeeper at Mönchengladbach, started their opening 2 Bundesliga games and is Switzerland's #1, 3 or 4 months out from the World Cup.
OK, we will chat about Manchester City, one of their key players, after the break. And also good news for Rangers. James Tavernier, their captain, has signed an extension to his current long-term deal at Ibrox. He joined in 2015, 353 appearances to date and 85 goals from right back. We'll see in a few minutes' time.
Discrimination. Let's kick it out.
Welcome back. 5 minutes or so just to rattle through a few of the bits and bobs before we go off at 5:30. Carve, lots of links between Bernardo Silva and Barcelona, who have been trying to regenerate this squad over the course of the summer. What can you tell us?
Yeah, there was a good story earlier today by Oliver Kay in The Athletic, and it's good news for Manchester City supporters because Oliver says it's his understanding that Bernardo Silva is now totally focused on staying at Manchester City. He's set to stay at the club. We know as far as City are concerned, they don't want him to leave. There's been talk that if he was to leave, he would cost at least €100 million. Obviously, he's been linked with a move to Barcelona for the past couple of summers. But we all know the financial problems that Barcelona have. People were thinking that if they sold Frankie de Jong, they would want to replace him with Bernardo Silva. At the moment, looks like that is not going to happen. And according to Oliver Kay, Bernardo Silva set to stay at City.
It would have seemed a strange one because such an integral but so often overlooked part of that team last season and for the last few seasons, in fact.
Yeah, an exceptional player for Manchester City. So effective, so intelligent, and he's really crucial to everything that Pep Guardiola wants to do in that midfield, and just actually how he operates just before the final third as well. He's been so transparent in talks with City, and I think this is actually a nice relationship that the club has with its players, because it was the same for Gabriel Jesus and Raheem Sterling, who said, listen, enjoyed it here, won loads, not really feeling the affection and the importance that I deserve, and I would like to move on. And when their evaluations have been met that City have set, they've left. And I think here with Silva, the fact that Barcelona, there's no doubt, have wanted him. There is also no doubt that he wanted and has wanted to go there. But the price tag of €100 million has proven prohibitive, even to Barcelona, who have been very, very good with their very good with their creative accounting. But a massive boost to City for him to stay. He's one of those players that, even if his heart was set on something, when that doesn't happen, you know you're going to get professionalism from him, and he's already proven it.
Willian played for a couple of clubs in London. Could he be off to a third?
This is interesting, actually, because the Brazil winger is training with the Fulham squad. Now, manager Marco Silva knows him very well and is very happy for Willian to train with Fulham just to keep his fitness up. We're told there have been no talks at this stage over a possible signing, but Fulham will have a look at him, and if there is any kind of deal that they'd want to do, that's when they will initiate talks. But there's no rush for this because he's a free agent following the termination of his contract at Corinthians last week.
And work being done by West Ham and Wolves as well.
Yeah, very quickly, Wolves. Mateus Nunes is in the UK for a medical ahead of his club record move from Sporting Lisbon. That deal is worth €45 million plus €5 million in add-ons. Wolves also interested in signing Benfica's Gonzalo Ramos. Newcastle, we were told, were interested in him as well. Talk of another done deal. West Ham United have announced it at 1 o'clock this afternoon, the one we were expecting, Thilo Kehrer from PSG on a 4-year deal plus a 2-year option. That's worth €12 million plus add-ons. They are after a couple of other players in Emerson from Chelsea and Hans Vanaken from Club Brugge. Now, Emerson, this one is stalling because the personal terms cannot be agreed just now. Club-to-club deal was close to being agreed for around £13 million plus add-ons. They're still working, though, on the Vanaken deal. They had a bid rejected for €10 million earlier on this week.
Can you tell me in 20 seconds about news from Italy?
What was I going to tell you? I was just an interesting line about Rabiot at Manchester United. Sky Italy is saying the negotiations have totally failed because there was very little conviction on the part of the player to move to Manchester United. So it wasn't all to do with money. He didn't really want to move to United because they're not in the Champions League. OK, that one maybe can be discussed a little bit more at 7 o'clock. For now, though, the three of you, thank you very much indeed for the moment. As ever, loads more on the Sky Sports website and the app as well. Back with more sports news in just a few minutes.